At night, a remote mountain lake reflects a city that does not exist. There are towers in the water, where the shoreline holds only trees. There are streetlights beneath the surface where no road has ever been built, and every window in that reflected city is glowing. The first photograph was dismissed as a double exposure. The second photograph was taken 17 years later. It showed the same impossible skyline in exactly the same place. This is File 017-006. This is the investigation into Lake Orison, the lake whose reflection belongs to somewhere else. No major road reaches the water and no town stands nearby. During certain nights, the surface becomes perfectly still. That is when the other skyline appears. The earliest known report came from a survey crew in 1968. They camped near the eastern shore while mapping the valley. Shortly after midnight, one surveyor noticed lights across the water. He assumed another crew had arrived on the opposite shore. Then he realized the lights were coming from below the horizon. The lake was reflecting buildings that were not standing above it. His camera captured 12 towers and hundreds of illuminated windows. There was nothing in front of them that could create the reflection. Their official report described the event as an optical anomaly, but one photograph was quietly removed from the public archive. On the back, someone had written a familiar symbol. 017. The file remained closed until the lake produced the skyline again. The second event happened exactly 17 years later. A forestry aircraft passed over Orison shortly after midnight. The pilot reported a grid of lights visible across the lake. From the air, the lights formed streets, blocks, and intersections. Photographs confirmed the same skyline recorded in 1968. Even individual towers occupied the same reflected positions. The reflection had not aged by a single day. That detail turned a strange lake into an active U-17 case. A field team reached Orison before the next predicted appearance. They installed cameras, sonar arrays, and weather instruments around the shore. On the seventh night, the wind suddenly disappeared. The temperature above the lake dropped without warning. Every ripple flattened until the surface looked like black glass. At 0370, the first light appeared in the water. Then, another window illuminated beside it. Within seconds, an entire city emerged across the reflection. The team could see towers, roads, bridges, and moving lights, but when they looked directly across the lake, they saw only darkness. The city existed in the reflection and nowhere else. Sonar found no structures beneath the lake. Radio scans detected no normal communication traffic. Yet one frequency carried a weak repeating signal. The signal sounded like distant traffic mixed with a human announcement. The audio was cleaned and slowed inside the mobile laboratory. One phrase became clear enough to recognize: "Do not look behind the water." The team assumed the message referred to the reflection. Then one camera recorded something the observers had missed. A figure was standing inside one of the reflected windows. The figure appeared only in the water. No person stood anywhere above that position. Some seemed to watch the lake from inside the impossible city. Others moved through rooms that had no physical counterpart. The investigators began mapping the reflected streets. One avenue ended at a circular plaza marked by a dark symbol. The shape matched the archive emblem exactly. S-17 had been built into the reflected city. The discovery suggested the city was not a random illusion. It was connected to the same network as Meer Haven and Platform 0. One road carried the same curve as the road from File 04. Another building matched the hidden floor from File 005. The city seemed to contain pieces of earlier locations. It looked less like a city and more like an archive made physical. At 042, the reflected traffic suddenly stopped. Every moving light froze at the same moment. The silhouettes vanished from the windows. Then every reflected clock visible to the cameras changed to 0370. Sonar still showed nothing beneath the team. But the reflected city started moving closer. Buildings grew larger without changing position on the real horizon. It was as if the reflection itself was approaching the surface. The team was ordered to leave the shoreline immediately. Before they could move, the lake flashed with white light. For 1 second, the water stopped reflecting the sky entirely. Instead, it showed a street at ground level inside the city. The camera was no longer looking down into water. It appeared to be looking through an open doorway. At the end of the reflected street stood a person holding a flashlight. The real investigator was standing beside the camera. The reflected version slowly raised one hand. Then, it pointed toward a building behind the camera viewpoint. The team turned toward the real shoreline. There was no building there. When they looked back, the reflected street had changed. A black archive door now stood where the figure had been. The door carried a red 017 symbol. Below the symbol was a simple sequence of 6 numbers. The numbers matched the current coordinates of Lake Orison. Then a second coordinate sequence appeared beneath them. Those coordinates pointed hundreds of kilometers away. Satellite records showed no lake and no city at that location. The team copied the coordinates before the reflection began to collapse. Street lights went dark 1 block at a time. Towers disappeared from the highest floors downward. The black door remained visible after everything else was gone. At exactly 0417, the door finally vanished. Wind returned across the valley almost immediately. The lake became ordinary water again. All cameras showed the same final frame. A single red light beneath an empty surface. The recovered coordinates were transferred into the U-17 archive. 3 days later, satellite imagery of the new location changed. A lake had appeared where dry land had been recorded before. No city surrounded it and no road reached its shore. But at 031, orbital image captured a faint grid of lights. Investigators now believe Lake Orison is not reflecting another place. It may be showing where unlisted places are stored between appearances. If that theory is correct, the city in the water is still growing, and every new 017 location may eventually appear inside it. Lake Orison remains officially classified as a natural mountain lake. The archive still monitors its surface every night. Because sometimes a reflection shows more than what stands above it. Sometimes it shows the world that was removed from ours, and somewhere beneath that silent water, the lights are still waiting. For centuries, sailors whispered about an island that should not exist. The stories always began with fog and ended with disappearance. Every witness described the same black cliffs and the same white lighthouse, but no map could keep the island in one place. It appeared once and then vanished for 17 years. Then it returned somewhere else across the ocean. No storm brought it, and no tide could explain it. This is File U-17-003. This is the investigation into Meer Haven Island, the island that moves every 17 years. Your first modern clue came from a research vessel in the Atlantic. The ship was found drifting with its engines still alive. Every cabin was empty, and every life jacket remained untouched. On the bridge, investigators found a wet navigation chart. A red circle marked coordinates far from any shipping route. Inside the circle, someone had written one word: Meer Haven. Meer. Satellite control reviewed the same coordinates from that night. One captured frame showed a dark island in open water. At the center stood a lone lighthouse facing the sea. The next satellite pass showed only empty ocean. There was no cloud cover and no technical failure. The island had simply stopped being there. The case was buried in restricted storage and quietly forgotten. 17 years later, a cargo pilot saw the island again. This time, it appeared in the South Pacific. The cliffs matched the older images stone for stone, The lighthouse matched them too, without a single visible change. The interval between sightings was exactly 17 years. Investigators reopened the file and searched older maritime archive. They found sailor logs describing land that rose from morning fog. They found whaling journals that mentioned a moving light above Black Rock. They found a naval diary that described an island gone by dawn. Every report was separated by the same strange cycle. Every report ended with the same silent lighthouse. One water-damaged journal from 1931 carried the first warning: the island is not lost, and it is not hiding. It is moving through places that no longer belong to the world. That sentence changed the investigation completely. A new expedition was approved before the next cycle closed. Researchers tracked sea fog, magnetic distortion, and abnormal time. On the 17th day, their instruments began to disagree. The horizon bent as if something hidden were pushing through it. Then dark land emerged where empty water had been seconds earlier. Meer Haven rose from the fog, like a memory returning. The shore was a narrow, pale beach beneath towering cliffs. Above the cliffs, the lighthouse turned in the dying light. No one appeared in the windows, and no voice came from within. The team landed at dusk with cameras, lanterns, and recorders. The air on the island felt colder than the sea around it. No birds crossed the sky above the cliffs. No insects moved in the grass around their boots. The only sound was the slow sweep of the lighthouse beam. Straight stone paths cut across the island toward the tower. Every path pointed to the same open door. Carved into the stones, they found the same recurring mark. The symbol appeared again and again beside the path. It was the mark they had seen in every earlier file. U-17 was waiting for them on the island. Inside the lower chamber stood shelves of navigation books. Sea logs filled the room in careful rows. Many of the books looked older than the first recorded sighting. A brass compass on the table refused to settle. Every clock in the room had stopped at 03:17. The walls were covered with maps pinned edge to edge. None of the maps showed ordinary coastlines. They showed cities, tunnels, valleys, and islands missing from every known atlas. One map matched the vanished city of Vera. Another traced the route that led to Platform 0. Meer Haven was connected to every US-17 case already on. In the next chamber, the team found cabinets full of field notes. Each note described a place that appeared and disappeared without warning. Some notes were centuries old and written in different languages, yet every page carried the same symbol at the top. One journal was newer than the rest and bound in dark blue cloth. It belonged to someone identified only as the keeper. The entries were calm, precise, and deeply unsettling. The keeper wrote that the island was not a refuge. It was an anchor. It held open a route between forgotten places. That route could not remain fixed for long. Every 17 years, the anchor shifted. When it shifted, every connected location moved with it. Cities disappeared, tunnels were buried, and coastlines changed. The world did not lose those places. It lost the ability to reach them. In the highest chamber, the team found a mechanical map larger than a table. Metal rings rotated around a glowing glass ocean. New coordinates appeared on the glass every 17 seconds. Then they faded and were replaced by others. Several matched old island sightings from the archive. Others matched no known point on Earth. Beside the machine hung the final entry from the keeper. If the light turns red, the anchor is shifting. Leave at once. And do not look back. Yenalt bounced wound. The warning came too late. At midnight, the lighthouse beam changed from white to red. The ocean beyond the windows became perfectly still. Then, the tower floor began to tremble. Loose papers rose into the air as if pulled by invisible wind. Outside, the shoreline started dissolving into silver mist. The team ran for the beach carrying the documents they could save. Behind them, the red beam swept across the island like a signal. Rocks near the cliffs faded before their eyes. The beach narrowed with every second. Their boats hit the water just as the mist swallowed the shore. From the sea, they watched the whole island grow dim. The lighthouse remained visible longer than anything else. Then, it too vanished into blank fog. By dawn, only open ocean remained around the boats. Every navigation system now displayed a different position. One recovered camera contained a final image from the upper window. It showed another island far beyond the mist. That second island had never appeared in any maritime record. A dark tower stood on its shore with its own red light. The Meer Haven documents were sealed inside the U-17 archive. They changed the meaning of every earlier file. The archive now treated Meer Haven as the center of the pattern. Vera and Platform Zero had not been destroyed. They had been shifted beyond the map, and Meer Haven was still moving. At 03:17 every month, a train stops at a station that does not exist. No city map shows it. No transit plan names it. And no passenger who enters it is ever recorded. The first report came from a night electrician in 1972. He was repairing a signal fault beneath Blackthorn Central Station. While working alone, he heard an arrival chime below the tracks. Then, a woman's voice announced a platform number that should not exist. Platform Zero. There had never been a Platform Zero on any public blueprint. The electrician followed the sound through a locked service corridor. At the end, he found a steel door hidden behind a cable wall. The door had no outside handle. It bore a faded transit emblem and a small mark reading 017. He heard a train idling beyond the steel door. By morning, he had filed a maintenance report. The report disappeared before noon. 3 days later, the electrician resigned without explanation. He never worked on a railway again. 11 years later, investigators found his notebook in sealed evidence storage. On the final page, he had written a single warning: "Do not wait for the last train." That note reopened a forgotten municipal mystery. Archived staff complaints described the same hidden announcements. Cleaners reported warm air rising from dead ventilation shafts after midnight. Security guards described brief power drops at 03:17. One dispatcher saw a phantom train bypass every control signal. Another saw an empty platform fill with shadows on a broken monitor. Every report ended the same way. The file was marked inactive and moved to restricted storage. Investigators began with the original station blueprints. Blackthorn Central had been rebuilt 6 times in 50 years, yet the bedrock survey revealed a hollow chamber below the oldest line. The chamber was never explained in any engineering record. It was too large to be a drainage vault, too symmetrical to be natural, and too deep for any standard platform. Ground scans showed stairs descending into the chamber, but those stairs ended in blank stone on every official map. Someone had drawn the route and erased the destination. To verify the anomaly, an inspection team entered the corridor at 02:41 a.m. They carried cameras, portable lights, and a reel-to-reel recorder. The steel door still stood behind the cable wall. This time, it was unlocked. Beyond it was a concrete stairwell spiraling into cold air. The deeper they went, the cleaner the walls became. Dust vanished. Rust vanished. And old maintenance markings gave way to polished black tile. At the bottom, they reached a platform lit by dim amber lamps. The station was enormous. It stretched farther than their flashlights could reach. A dark track ran through the center like a wound in the earth. On the far wall hung a complete city rail map. One line was marked in red. It did not match any known route. Its name was the Hollow Line. The final stop was Platform 0. Every clock in the station was frozen at 03:17, yet the lights were still humming. The benches stood in perfect rows without dust. Ticket machines glowed with standby power. The glass boards showed no destinations, only the words "next arrival." Under every display was the same symbol, U-17. Investigators searched the ticket office first. Inside were paper tickets bundled with twine. Every ticket was stamped with a date from the future. The destination field was always blank. The price field always read paid. And the passenger count box always read 1. In a back cabinet, they found station logbooks wrapped in plastic. The oldest entry was dated 1949. That was decades before Blackthorn Central officially opened. Early entries recorded cargo arrivals with no listed contents. Later entries recorded passenger transfers with no listed names. Then the records became stranger. One line read arrival from Vera. Another read relocation approved by 017. A third simply said memory retained in transit. Investigators photographed every page. Before they could leave, the platform speakers clicked on. A calm female voice filled the station. The final inbound service approaching Platform 0. Please remain behind the yellow line. There was no operator in the booth. No active control signal on their equipment. And no vibration on the rails. Then wind rushed through the tunnel. A pale light appeared in the darkness. The train emerged without sound. It glided to a stop in front of them. The exterior looked older than the city above. Black enamel reflected the amber lights like wet stone. None of the carriage windows were clear. Each one was clouded from the inside. The doors opened by themselves. Warm air rolled onto the platform. Every seat inside the train was empty. But the floor was damp with fresh footprints. One investigator saw words carved into a window. "We are still arriving." The team tried to radio the surface. No signal left the station. A second announcement began immediately. Transfer available for all unlisted locations. Doors closing in 10 seconds. One camera operator stepped backward across the train threshold. The doors shut before anyone could pull him back. The carriage lights turned blue. The train pulled away without sound. It vanished into darkness in less than 3 seconds. Search crews reached the stairwell at dawn. They reported no station below. Only a sealed shaft of black stone. On the recovered tape, the missing operator whispered one final message. "This train moves places, not people." Today, Platform 0 remains active under 017 observation, and somewhere below Blackthorn, the last train is still waiting. At the edge of the northern desert, there is a road that appears only after sunset. No highway map includes it, and no road authority admits building it. Drivers who enter the road describe the same impossible destination. They arrive in a town that vanished from history 50 years ago. This is File 017004. This is the investigation into the road that leads back to yesterday. The first modern report came from a truck driver in 2006. He was crossing the desert after midnight during a navigation failure. His radio lost every station at exactly 11:43 p.m. A new road appeared on the right side of the highway. The road was narrow and lined with old wooden telephone poles. A rusted sign pointed toward a town named Bellweather. The driver followed the road, believing it would lead to fuel. Instead, he found a town glowing beneath yellow streetlights. The buildings looked untouched since the 1970s. Cars were parked along the street, but none had drivers. Store windows displayed products no longer manufactured. A cinema marquee advertised a film released in 1974. The driver entered a diner and found coffee still steaming. Every chair was empty, and every plate had been left unfinished. A wall clock above the counter showed 11:43 p.m. The driver called out, but nobody answered. Then the payphone at the back of the room began to ring. When he lifted the receiver, he heard his own voice. The voice warned him to leave before the lights went out. He returned to his truck and drove back toward the highway. The road disappeared behind him before he reached the main route. By sunrise, he could not find the turnoff again. His dashboard clock was 17 minutes slow. Investigators dismissed the report as exhaustion and confusion, but similar accounts were already buried in regional archives. A family in 1989 described the same wooden telephone poles. A police officer in 1972 reported the same rusted sign. A survey crew in 1955 recorded a road where no road existed. Every witness described Bellweather in the same frozen condition. Every witness reported the same time on every clock. The official history of Bellweather ended in 1974. Records claimed a chemical fire forced the town to be abandoned, but no fire report could be found in any public archive. Aerial photographs from that year showed the town one day. The next series showed only bare desert. No ruins remained, and no roads led to the location. The entire town had vanished between photographs. The case was transferred to a restricted division under U-17 review. A field team was sent to the desert during the next reported cycle. They equipped 2 vehicles with cameras, radios, and tracking beacons. At 11:43 p.m., every radio channel went silent. A line of wooden telephone poles appeared beside the highway. Then a narrow road formed beneath the headlights. The team turned onto it and lost contact with the outside world. The desert beyond the windows became darker than the night sky. Their compasses rotated without stopping. The tracking beacons reported 2 locations at once. After 7 minutes, the lights of Bellweather appeared ahead. The town looked exactly like the archive photographs from 1974. The same newspaper rested outside the same grocery store. Its front page carried the date October 17, 1974. No wind moved the paper and no dust covered the street. The investigators entered the town hall first. Inside, they found desks covered with unfinished documents. A meeting agenda mentioned emergency relocation orders. The final page carried a red U-17 stamp. A map on the wall marked several locations from earlier files. Vera was circled beneath the Atlantic. Platform 0 was marked below Blackthorn. Meer Haven was drawn in 3 different oceans. Bellweather was connected to all of them by a single red line. The line ended at a symbol labeled Transfer Point 4. The team moved toward the old municipal power station. Every streetlight grew brighter as they approached it. Inside, the station machines were running without fuel. A row of monitors showed streets from the town in real time, but several screens showed the investigators arriving hours earlier. One screen showed them leaving the town the next morning. Another showed one vehicle returning without anyone inside. The timestamps on the screens moved backward instead of forward. A technician opened the main control cabinet. Behind the wiring was a circular mechanism marked U-17. The mechanism rotated once every 17 seconds. With each rotation, the town lights flickered. The team realized Bellweather was not frozen in time. It was repeating the final 17 minutes before disappearance. Every empty cup and unfinished meal returned to its earlier position. Every clock returned to 11:43 p.m. The loop was preparing to restart again. A recorded message began playing through the town speakers. Residents were ordered to gather at Transfer Point 4. The voice described the event as an emergency relocation. Then, silhouettes appeared at the ends of the streets. They moved slowly toward the center of town. The figures wore clothing from 1974. None of them reacted to the investigation team. They walked through doors and walls as if following an older path. The team followed them beneath the power station. A hidden stairwell led into a circular, underground chamber. At its center stood a metal doorway filled with pale light. The missing residents gathered silently around it. One by one, they stepped through and disappeared. The doorway displayed coordinates instead of a destination name. Those coordinates matched Meer Haven Island during its last appearance. Bellweather had not been destroyed or abandoned. The entire population had been transferred somewhere else. The town remained as a repeating record of the event. The mechanism began rotating faster as the final minute approached. Every light in Bellweather turned red. The underground doorway started widening beyond its metal frame. The investigators ran back toward their vehicles. Behind them, the town filled with the sound of ringing telephones. Every payphone carried the same warning in the driver's voice. Leave before the lights go out. The team reached the road as the town began fading behind them. Their second vehicle lost power near the last telephone pole. The first vehicle returned to the highway alone. 17 minutes later, the missing vehicle appeared beside it. Its doors were open and every seat was empty. The onboard camera contained one final frame. It showed Bellweather under a different sky with Meer Haven on the horizon. File 01704 remains active and unresolved because Bellweather is not trapped in the past. It is waiting at the next transfer point.
At 3:17 a.m., an abandoned radio began naming people listening to it. The first name belonged to a fisherman who had vanished 20 years earlier. The second belonged to the technician recording the broadcast that very night. Then the voice calmly announced a place called Morrow Vale. No atlas, census, or satellite record contained any town by that name. Yet the broadcast gave coordinates accurate to within 3 meters. They pointed toward an empty section of the northern Norwegian Sea. 6 months later, our survey aircraft found streetlights beneath the fog. The radio spoke again before anyone aboard touched the receiver. 3 will enter Morrow Vale, it said. 2 will return. The recording you are about to hear was recovered from the third person, according to every official record. That third person never existed. The story began in November 1987 inside a coastal monitoring station. Its operator, Elias Venn, tracked weather traffic for passing cargo ships. Shortly after midnight, every channel fell silent at exactly the same moment. Venn described the silence as pressure, not the absence of sound. At 3:17, a woman's voice emerged beneath a low mechanical pulse. She read tomorrow's weather for streets Venn had never heard of. Lantern Avenue would flood. North Pier would close before sunrise. Children were advised to remain indoors until the bells stopped ringing. The transmission ended with a phrase repeated exactly 17 times. Morrow Vale remembers everyone who has forgotten Morrow Vale. Venn copied the recording and reported it to his regional supervisor. By noon, 2 unidentified officials had removed every tape except one. Venn concealed the surviving cassette inside the station's emergency beacon. He marked it with a circle crossed by a diagonal line. Beneath the symbol, he added the number 17 in red ink. 3 days later, Elias Venn disappeared during a routine walk home. Police found his keys, his wallet, and a still-burning cigarette. There were no footprints leading away from where the cigarette lay. The monitoring station closed the following spring and was gradually forgotten. 36 years passed before contractors dismantled its emergency beacon. Inside, They discovered a cassette untouched by moisture or corrosion. The label carried Ven's handwriting, Morrow Vale, and the same coordinates. It reached our archive through a source who requested permanent anonymity. That was when the signal analyst noticed something Ven could not. Beneath the woman's voice was a second recording played almost backward. It was not language, music, or any known form of interference. The pulse contained tide tables stretching more than a century ahead. Every calculation assumed an island where open water currently existed. When converted into elevation data, the pulse produced a street map. 42 buildings surrounded a harbor, shaped like a human eye. At its center stood a radio tower labeled Station 17. The analyst compared the layout with declassified naval surveys from 1954. One survey contained a blacked-out rectangle matching the island perfectly. Its margin carried a faded approval stamp. Project 017. We requested satellite coverage for the coordinates during the next clear window. Every satellite scheduled to pass overhead malfunctioned within 11 minutes. A direct survey was authorized under strict radio silence conditions. The field agent would document the site and collect physical evidence. The signal analysts insisted on joining to monitor changes in the transmission. Their pilot was Captain Lena Orlov, an experienced Arctic rescue specialist. Orlov appears clearly in the mission video and equipment manifests. Remember that detail because the archive no longer contains her name. The aircraft departed Tromsø shortly before dawn on February 17th. Weather reports promised clear skies and visibility beyond 80 kilometers. 40 minutes later, a perfectly circular fog bank appeared ahead. The compass rotated once, stopped north, then pointed straight down. Below them, waves ended against a coastline absent from every screen. Morrow Vale had appeared exactly where the radio said it would. The island measured less than 4 kilometers from shore to shore. Yet, its streets continued beyond the coastline beneath the surrounding water. Orlov landed on an asphalt road marked with airport guidance symbols. There was no runway, terminal, hangar, or evidence of aircraft. Streetlights remained illuminated, despite the pale morning sun. Rain covered the pavement, but no rain had fallen during their approach. Every parked vehicle faced toward the harbor, with its doors unlocked. Their engines were warm, although dust sealed each hood and windshield. The first building was a cafe, prepared for customers who never arrived. Coffee still steamed in 11 cups, arranged around the silent room. On the wall, every clock displayed precisely 3:17. The second hand of each clock moved only when nobody watched. The team entered homes expecting abandonment, decay, or human remains. Instead, every room appeared occupied only moments before their arrival. Baths were warm, televisions glowed, kettles trembled on cold stoves. Family photographs showed houses, streets, and landscapes, but never people. Mirrors had been covered with newspaper, dated the following morning. One headline reported the arrival of 3 unnamed investigators. The photograph showed their aircraft already burning beside the harbor. Outside, the aircraft remained, intact and visible between the buildings. The signal analyst detected the broadcast coming from every powered object. Even disconnected telephones whispered weather reports through their receivers. Then the town's public speakers clicked on, one after another. The woman's voice welcomed each team member by full name. She described the field agent standing beneath a broken blue awning. She described Orlov raising her camera toward the western clock tower. She described the analyst removing his headphones before he moved. Each announcement preceded the action by exactly 5 seconds. They tested the pattern by refusing to follow the next prediction. The voice said Orlov would look through a bakery window. Orlov closed her eyes and faced in the opposite direction. 5 seconds later, every window reflected her looking inside. The reflections smiled while the real Orlov began to scream. The field agent ordered everyone back toward the aircraft immediately. A street that had been straight now curved toward the radio tower. Every route they chose returned them to the same red door. The red door belonged to Station 17, the map's central building. Its lock opened when the analyst replayed Ven's original cassette. Inside, dust covered everything except 3 pairs of fresh footprints. The tracks matched their boots and led deeper into the station. Along the corridor hung portraits of the town's radio operators. Every portrait showed the same woman at a different apparent age. The earliest photograph was dated 1903, before radio broadcasting existed. The newest carried tomorrow's date and showed an empty chair. The broadcast room contained a microphone, tape machines, and no transmitter. Cables disappeared through the floor into a sealed lower level. On the console, a red button blinked in 5-second intervals. Above it, someone had scratched, "Do not let it finish." A reel began turning, although the machine had no electrical connection. Through the speaker, they heard their own voices from moments ahead. The agent's voice ordered the analyst not to open the floor hatch. The analyst's voice answered, "We already did." The hatch released before either man touched its locking wheel. A staircase descended farther than the island's geology could contain. Orlov remained upstairs to maintain contact with the aircraft. Her final visible gesture was a raised hand signaling 5 minutes. The agent and analyst descended through 11 identical concrete landings. Every landing carried a map of a different non-existent settlement. Some were islands, others were tunnels, cities, or stations under ice. Each location bore the same symbol, Project 017. At the lowest land, she found an archive larger than the town. Metal shelves stretched beyond their lights in every direction. Boxes were catalogued by latitude, longitude, and date of disappearance. One drawer contained maps printed on materials neither could identify. Another held photographs taken from impossible positions above the Earth. The analyst discovered a cabinet labeled with their mission number. Inside were 3 personnel files prepared decades before their births. The first described the field agent as returned with partial memory. The second described the analyst as returned carrying active signal. Orlov's file contained only a photograph of the empty broadcast chair. Behind the photograph was a handwritten instruction addressed to me. It said, "Archivist, this is where your collection begins." Upstairs, Orlov called down to ask why they had returned without her. The men were still beneath the station when her message arrived. Then another Orlov answered from somewhere deeper in the archive. Both voices repeated the same sentence, separated by 5 seconds. "Do not look at me when the lights turn red." The agent closed his eyes. The analyst watched the spectrum display. A 4th heartbeat appeared between their 2 signals on the monitor. Footsteps approached, perfectly matching their own breathing rhythm. When the lights returned to white, Orlov's radio lay on the floor. Its casing was decades older, corroded, and engraved with Ven's initials. The speaker whispered, "2 will return, but only 1 will remember." Somewhere above them, the aircraft engine started on its own. They ran upstairs as every tape machine began playing simultaneously. Thousands of voices described disasters that had not happened yet. Some transmissions came from dates more than 6 centuries away. Others repeated final messages from places erased from recorded history. At the broadcast room, Orlov was gone, and her equipment remained. The tower voice announced the aircraft would burn in 60 seconds. The men crossed streets, now filling with silent human silhouettes. Every figure faced away, holding a radio against one ear. In shop windows, their reflections ran 5 seconds ahead of them. One reflection reached the aircraft and opened its door first. The agent fired an emergency flare through the reflected windshield. Every streetlight shattered, and the silhouettes turned toward the tower. They reached the aircraft with 17 seconds remaining on the countdown. No pilot sat inside, but the controls responded to the analyst's voice. The aircraft accelerated, while buildings folded inward behind its wings. At 0, the island vanished without fire, impact, or displaced water. Navigation returned instantly, placing them 70 kilometers off course. Rescue controllers asked why 2 unauthorized men were flying a stolen aircraft. They had no record of Captain Lena Orlov or the survey mission. The aircraft registry showed it had been decommissioned 9 years earlier. Fuel tanks were empty when the aircraft landed safely at Tromsø. The field agent remembered entering the town with only the analyst. He insisted no pilot had accompanied them at any point. The analyst remembered Orlov, but could no longer describe her face. Their cameras contained 11 minutes of corrupted footage and one clear frame. It showed 3 figures standing out Station 17's red door. The third figure had no face, shadow, or reflection in nearby glass. In its hand was the cassette hidden by Elias Venn in 1987. The cassette now contains 15 minutes absent from Venn's original recording. Those minutes document the team's arrival before the mission was authorized. The final voice on the tape is neither Venn's nor Orlov's. It belongs to me, although I have never visited Morrow Vale. My recorded voice lists 17 locations missing from every modern map. The first was Morrow Vale. 16 files remain unopened. If your radio speaks at 3:17, do not answer its questions. It is not searching for a place. It is searching for you.
At midnight, one office building gains a floor that does not exist by day. The elevators reach it even though no button is marked for the level. Security cameras record people entering and returning hours older. By sunrise, every trace of the floor disappears. This is File U17005. This is the investigation into the 13th floor of Halcyon Tower. Halcyon Tower opened in 1986 with 42 registered floors. Its blueprints were ordinary, and its inspection records were complete. For years, nothing about the building attracted attention. Then a night cleaner reported an elevator stopping above the top floor. The display showed a number that should not have existed: 43. The doors opened onto a corridor lit by pale yellow lamps. The cleaner stepped out and heard office phones ringing behind locked doors. Every wall clock showed 0 Team Blygen 17. He returned to the elevator before the doors could close. When he reached the lobby, the sunrise had already begun. His watch showed that only 6 minutes had passed. The building records showed that he had been missing for 9 hours. Management dismissed the report as exhaustion, but the elevator maintenance logs recorded an impossible stop. The system had traveled to a floor above its physical limit. Engineers searched the shaft and found no hidden extension. The roof machinery sat exactly where the plan said it should. There was no room for another floor. 3 months later, a security guard reported the same event. At 03:07, the elevators stopped responding to lobby controls. One car rose past floor 42 without receiving a command. The guard watched the display change to 43. Then, every security monitor filled with static. When the picture returned, the elevator doors were open upstairs. A camera showed a corridor that did not match any known part of the tower. The walls were covered with dark wood and old brass signs. Figures moved behind frosted office glass. None of them appeared on the employee registry. The guard printed a single frame before the footage vanished. In the corner of the image was a small circular mark, E17. That symbol moved the case into restricted review. Investigators arrived during the next predicted window. They placed sensors inside all 6 elevator cars. They also installed independent cameras inside the shaft. At 03116, every instrument was functioning normally. 1 minute later, the building power dipped for 2 seconds. Elevator 4 began rising without a passenger command. Its position passed the top registered floor. The shaft camera showed only concrete and cables. Yet the elevator continued climbing through empty space. The display changed from 42 to 43. The doors opened onto the impossible corridor. 2 investigators had entered, while the others remained below. The air smelled of dust paper and warm electrical wiring. The corridor stretched farther than the tower could physically contain. Doors lined both sides with brass number plates. Every plate carried dates instead of office names. Some dates belonged to the future. Others matched days when people had disappeared from the building. The first unlocked office contained rows of empty desks. Computers glowed with screens showing employee records. The names belonged to workers from different decades. Some had died before Halcyon Tower was built. Others had not yet been born. Each record included an arrival time of 03:17. The next office contained stacks of personal belongings. There were watches, keys, photographs, and employee badges. Every item belonged to someone once reported missing. A cassette recorder on the desk was still running. The tape contained voices reading dates and names. One voice belonged to the cleaner from the first report. He had never recorded that message. The investigators continued deeper into the floor. The corridor changed slightly every time they looked back. Doors moved and intersections appeared where walls had been. Their radios received only fragments of office conversations. Some voices discussed events that had not happened yet. Others repeated the investigators' own words seconds before they spoke. At the center of the floor, they found a large conference room. A table inside held 43 folders arranged in a circle. Each folder corresponded to one floor of Halcyon Tower. The first 42 folders contained ordinary building records. The final folder was marked 017. Inside were blueprints of locations from earlier investigations. One page showed the lighthouse on Meer Haven Island. Another showed Platform 0 beneath Blackthorn. A third showed the road that led back to yesterday. Halcyon Tower was connected to every anomaly already discovered. The final blueprint showed the tower as a vertical map. Each floor represented a different moment rather than a place. Floor 43 existed between recorded time periods. It collected people who entered at the wrong moment. A handwritten note explained the purpose of the building. The tower does not contain the extra floor. The extra floor contains the tower. A second note listed arrivals that had not happened yet. One of those entries carried the investigator's own name. Before the team could copy the note, the lights turned red. Every office phone began ringing at once. The clocks changed from 0317 to 0318. The impossible floor started collapsing into darkness. Doors opened and shadowed figures stepped into the corridor. The investigators ran back toward the elevator. Behind them, the walls stretched and folded like paper. The elevator doors began closing before they reached the car. One investigator forced the doors apart with a metal case. Both entered as the corridor vanished behind them. The elevator descended without showing any floor numbers. When the doors reopened, the lobby was filled with daylight. Only 11 minutes had passed for the team. Outside the tower, 3 full days had gone by. The recovered cameras contained no usable footage, but one audio file survived the descent. A voice from the corridor whispered a final warning. The next floor will not appear above you. It will appear inside the building you are already in. Halcyon Tower was closed for structural inspection. No fault was ever found in the elevators or the shaft. The building reopened under continuous 017 monitoring. Officially, it still contains only 42 floors. But every night at 0317 one elevator rises beyond the roof, and somewhere above the city the missing floor is still collecting names.